Hey everyone, welcome to Unique Ways with Thomas Gerard, an audio podcast. Got an awesome guest on today. He is a lead UI UX and product designer with over 17 years experience. He's a proponent of user-centered design practices and design thinking. Please join me in welcoming Miklos Phillips. Welcome.
Hi, thank you, Thomas, for having me.
You ready for 20 questions?
Yes, I am.
Okay, here we go. Number one, tell me a little bit more about yourself. What do you do?
My name is Miklos. It's not a Greek name. It's Hungarian. It's a long story. I won't get into it. I'm a UX guy and a product designer. I have a passion for design in general and in all its forms, whether it's industrial design, architecture, interior design, graphic design, or motion graphics. Since a young age, I always wanted to work in creative problem-solving areas like industrial design and architecture. And this passion led to becoming a UX and product designer. I have over 16 years of experience now as a lead product designer in both the B2B and the B2C realms, but I have close to 20 years of experience in design coming from visual and graphic design. I hold a design strategy certification from the University of Sydney, and I've built my UX and product design career predominantly in the US, in the tech centers of New York, San Francisco, and LA. I've spent a lot of time in the last 5 years in London, and I still tend to bounce back and forth between the US and the UK, as I do a fair amount of work across the pond. One of the more interesting gigs I recently have been working on was at the Financial Times for 2 years in London. I'm also a speaker, writer, and a mentor with around 10,000 followers between Medium, LinkedIn, and Twitter.
Great. Yeah, and just to note for our audience, if you like the UX angle of this episode, please check out the episode with Dan Segal. I worked with him in UX at Lenovo in Beijing and Hong Kong. Okay, number two, what's a key piece of knowledge that makes you different?
I'm interested in what makes us tick, neuroscience and the inner workings of the human brain. I've studied this area for a long time and bring this knowledge to my daily work in UX and digital product design. In fact, I'm currently writing a book on the subject called The Neuroscience of UX.
Great. And number three, why this of all things? Why do you do what you do?
Well, as I move about the world, I see all kinds of design problems, from walking down the street, urban design, for example, to getting on public transportation or shopping. There are millions of design problems to be solved. Trying to figure out what could be done to improve things with more user-centered design is what gets me out of bed in the morning.
Nice, good stuff. Number four, some people struggle with, but the question is, what does your future look like?
Well, I hope my future will be mostly about relaxing and sipping super bock lager beer on the beach in Portugal. But apart from that, I would most likely be doing a bit of work here and there, writing design books, going to conferences to talk about design, and mentoring up-and-coming designers.
Glad to hear you talk about Portugal. I was in Lisbon recently and absolutely loved just being by the water there. It's amazing. So number five, let's talk about location. How does the notion of place play into what you do?
So I like to be location independent minded. I don't think the notion of place plays much of a role in my work. So I don't really think about location.
Nice. Number six, if you had to start from the beginning, what advice would you give your former younger self?
I would say look for opportunities that maximize your skills, that excite you, and where you can make an impact. Where the bar is a little higher than your comfort level, push yourself a little. Growth happens when you start doing things you're not qualified to do. Don't just do things for money, for survival, if you can. Sometimes, yes, we have to. And also, don't sweat the small stuff. In design, this could be pixel perfection, fiddling with typography forever, color scheme obsession, or getting a certain drop shadow right. Designers out there know exactly what I'm talking about. Instead, focus on solving problems with great user-centric design and develop a more business-focused, value-driven design mindset. After the UX is done, the usability, the value creation is in place, then sweat the small stuff because after all, details matter.
Nice. And number 7, what's a day in your life like?
I like to mix it up. My lifestyle is pretty healthy. I think I have a good work-life balance. In between doing my work, I take long walks while listening to podcasts or music. Typically, I work for a few hours on a project and then drop it for something different, take a pause from it. I find that when I do that, I come back with a refreshed mind and a new set of eyes to look at the work from a different perspective. I also read newsletters I've subscribed to and articles on my favorite blogs, such as the Nielsen Norman Group and the UX Collective on Medium. I find by staying connected to the design community conversation, I can learn about some new approach or get inspiration to kickstart a new idea or a new avenue to explore.
Yeah, we had John Maeda on the show, and he talked about how when he gets comfortable, that's a sign that he has to do something new or try something different. It sounds very similar.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So number 8, lifelong learning is a popular topic. How do you stay up to date?
Well, as I mentioned, I read a fair number of newsletters. That's one way of staying up to date. I also read a lot of research online, like white papers. I read a ton of books and blogs. I go to conferences. I also go to design and art exhibitions where I often discover something new. And this could be anything, a different way of doing things, a new approach, a new material combination, or new color combinations, and so on.
What tools do you use? Are you entirely digital?
I am totally, I like to travel and I work remotely. So I'm definitely a digital nomad. My main tool is Figma and FigJam for just about all of my work now, including prototyping, UX research and testing, even presentations and invoicing. But I also use Adobe Creative Cloud as needed, Photoshop, Illustrator, Premiere, and After Effects.
Nice. And you mentioned a note about this, but the question is, how do you deal with work-life balance?
Yeah, I definitely think it's important nowadays to achieve a good balance between life and work. In Europe, as opposed to the US, people tend to work to live, not to live to work. And I prefer that mindset. I'm more into working smarter, not harder. And I'm definitely not into workism, which is a belief that employment is not only necessary for the economy and personal income, but it is also the centerpiece of one's identity and life's purpose. Um, as I mentioned earlier, it's important to take breaks, give yourself a mental refresh, get up from the computer and meditate or do something physically active. I personally like to go for long walks, go to the gym, do some yoga, or go for a swim.
Nice. And just past halfway here, number 11, if you weren't doing what you do now, what would you be doing?
I would probably be an urban designer because I love that area, that field. Possibly an interior designer or an architect.
What would you not like to do with your career?
I would not like working on a factory assembly line. I can't imagine anything more dreadful.
Do you have a favorite word, quote, or sentence?
My favorite quote is design is not just what it looks like and feels like. Design is how it works. And that's from Steve Jobs, of course.
Do you have a least favorite word, quote, or sentence?
Limitation is my least favorite word because, as Einstein said, in the middle of every difficulty lies opportunity.
If you had to pick one word to describe yourself, what word would you choose?
Tenacious.
What keeps you up at night?
What keeps me up at night is how to sell the value of design to those who do not have the mind to understand it or the acumen to appreciate it.
Final stretch here, number 17. What's a dream you're chasing?
Designing innovative user-centric products is something I'm chasing. I aim to work on projects that push the boundaries of design and create products that truly enhance people's lives. This may involve designing things like cutting edge apps or devices or platforms that solve real world problems.
What inspires you?
Great filmmaking inspires me in terms of storytelling. Then there's great industrial design, urban design, architecture, and art.
Any advice you'd like to share?
Sure. For any creative or designer, which is my domain, I was going to say, know your limits, but I believe limitations are opportunities in disguise, as I had mentioned. Instead, my advice would be to find your lane, know your lane, and own it. So be comfortable in it. You are unique. Focus on your uniqueness, your skills and knowledge. Don't try to be everyone, everywhere all at once. Build on your strengths and your unique qualities. Find your niche, stand out. Also, while in your lane, do something unexpected. Be bold and be brave. Go for it. As you work, for example, experiment with different ideas. Don't just settle for the good enough. Get those creative juices flowing. And to quote Steve Jobs again, stay hungry.
Nice. And the one everyone loves, number 20. How can our listeners keep tabs on you? What should we look at? How do we follow you?
So you can find me at uxwithmiklos.com. So that's UX with Miklos, my name, my first name.com, where you can check out my certified UX course that I teach. You can, of course, also follow me on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Medium, where I have over 30 articles on design. Just search for my name, Miklos Phillips. Again, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much for being on. Returning to the UX angle has been something that, always wanted to do. Having Dan Segal on, who I worked with at Lenovo, was a great kind of UX episode, a very popular one, and I expect this one will be too. So thank you so much.
Sure, it was my pleasure. Thanks again.